Rule number 6, protect what matters. Rules for dating a dad-mom romance. Written by Suzanne Ash. Please like and subscribe. Chapter 1. Sophie. The bell above my studio door chimes as I arrange the last clay balls at each workstation. Golden afternoon light filters through the windows of what used to be an old hardware store, now breathing with the earthy scent of clay and metallic hum of the kiln. Good afternoon. Welcome to, I begin, but the words catch in my throat. A man stands in the doorway, backlit by autumn's sun, one hand resting protectively on a boy's shoulder. He's tall with broad shoulders filling out his navy firefighter uniform. Dark, slightly mussed hair frames a face with watchful, slate-gray eyes that seem to catalog every detail of the room. And of me. The boy shifts nervously, clutching a worn backpack against his chest. Hi there, I say, gentler, crouching to his eye level. I'm Sophie Bennett. Welcome to pottery class. The boy looks up at his father, waiting for permission. The man gives a barely perceptible nod. I'm Caleb Rivers, he says, voice deep and steady. This is my son, CJ. It stands for Caleb Jr., the boy explains with a small voice. But everyone calls me CJ. I smile. It's nice to meet you, CJ. How about I show you where to put your backpack? We're making mugs today. I point to my own slightly lopsided creation with its sky blue glaze. Caleb's eyes scan the studio with practiced efficiency. Class ends at 4:30, I tell him. You're welcome to stay if you'd like. I'll be back to pick him up, Caleb says, gaze settling on the kiln room. Is this your only other exit? I nod, noticing the emblem on his uniform shirt, Juniper Falls Fire and Rescue. There's a back door behind the kiln room. Caleb crouches to CJ's level. Remember the rule? Always check your exits, CJ recites, serious beyond his years. I can't help myself. Firefighter rule? Caleb stands, and I catch the ghost of a smile before it disappears. Life rule, he replies dryly. As CJ examines the clay tools, Caleb lowers his voice. He gets anxious sometimes in new places. If he starts breathing too fast or gets quiet, just call me. He hands me a business card. I notice the roughness of his fingertips against mine. I'll take good care of him. Something flickers in his eyes before he nods. I'll be back at 4:30. After he leaves, I shake off the strange emptiness his departure creates and focus on the arriving children. 15 minutes into class, CJ sits at the farthest workstation, approaching the clay with careful precision while other children dive in messily. The clay remembers everything you do to it, I explain while demonstrating. Be gentle but firm. When I reach CJ, I notice his hands trembling slightly. Hey there, I say softly. May I show you a trick? He nods. I place my hands near his. Put your palms like this. Now close your eyes. Skeptical but obedient, he follows. Feel the clay. It's been around longer than any of us. Breathe with me. In, out. To my surprise, he matches his breathing to mine. Now try again, I say. His fingers steady as the clay responds. I did it, he whispers. You sure did. That's going to be a beautiful mug. By class end, CJ's mug is the most carefully crafted. It's simple with even walls and a graceful handle. As other kids rush to show parents their creations, CJ cleans his station methodically. Your dad's not here yet, I say, checking the clock. It's 4:25. He's always exactly on time, CJ informs me. 5 more minutes. As we wrap his mug in plastic, CJ adds, my dad builds things too. Not with clay, but he can fix anything broken. He's a firefighter. He saves people. The pride in his voice is unmistakable. The bell chimes, and Caleb appears, now in flannel and jeans. His eyes find CJ, his expression softening imperceptibly. Dad. I made a mug. CJ carefully lifts his creation. Caleb examines it with genuine interest. That's solid craftsmanship, bud. Ms. Bennett said I'm a natural, CJ says, glancing at me for confirmation. Caleb looks directly at me, and I feel an unexpected flutter beneath my ribs. Thank you for the class. He was wonderful. We have classes every Tuesday and Thursday, if he'd like to come back. CJ looks up hopefully. Can I, Dad? Please? We'll see about Thursday, Caleb says, non-committal. As they leave, I call out, don't forget rule number 1. CJ grins over his shoulder. Always check your exits. And this time, I'm certain. Caleb Rivers almost smiles. Alone in my quiet studio, I run my finger over his business card, Caleb Rivers, Juniper Falls Fire and Rescue. This is just about pottery class, I tell myself. But I know I'm lying. There's something about that guarded man and his serious son that has lodged in my mind like clay waiting to be shaped. 3 days after CJ's first class, I'm alone in the studio well past sunset. Thursday's class is tomorrow, and I still haven't heard whether CJ will return. Not that I've been checking my phone. Much. The studio feels different at night. More intimate, with just my pottery wheel spinning and soft folk music drifting from the small speaker in the corner. Outside, Juniper Falls has settled into evening quiet, punctuated by occasional car lights sweeping past the windows. I've been throwing vessels since closing time, losing myself in the rhythm of centering, opening, pulling. Clay has always been my sanctuary. It's the one constant I could rely on when everything else fell apart. Tonight, I'm working on a set of large serving bowls commissioned by the Copper Kettle, the diner downtown. Sarah, the owner, wants them for her autumn soup specials. As I finish trimming the foot of the last bowl, the kiln timer dings. I've been firing a test batch of glazes. They are new formulas I've been experimenting with for weeks. I wipe my hands on my apron and head to the back room. The heat hits me as I open the door. The kiln glows orange through its viewpoint, the digital display showing it's reached peak temperature. I check my watch. Another hour before the cooling cycle begins. I'm about to close the door when I notice something unusual. There's a tendril of darker smoke seeping from around the kiln lid. That's not right, I mutter, stepping closer. A sharp smell hits my nostrils. Not the usual ceramic firing scent, but something acrid and wrong. My heart rate quickens. One of my test glazes must be reacting badly, maybe releasing chemicals it shouldn't. I quickly press the emergency shutdown, but as I reach for the power cable, the overhead sprinklers activate with a mechanical whine. Almost simultaneously, the fire alarm erupts in an ear-splitting wail. No, no, no. I shout over the noise, jumping back as cold water cascades down. The kiln isn't on fire. It's just the smoke from the chemical reaction. But now water is everywhere, splattering into the red-hot kiln, sending up hissing steam clouds. I stumble backward, slipping on the wet floor as water soaks through my clothes. The alarm continues its relentless screech, and I know the signal has already gone to the fire department. There's nothing to do but wait. Within minutes, I hear the wail of a siren approaching. I grab a towel to wrap around my shoulders and push wet strands of hair from my face. Just as I open the front door, fire truck lights splash red and blue across the building. And of course, because the universe has a twisted sense of humor, the first person through my door is Caleb Rivers. He's transformed from the man I met days ago. Dressed in full firefighter gear, face set in professional concentration, he scans the space with swift efficiency. 2 other firefighters follow behind him. Everyone out, he calls over the alarm. Just me, I reply, hugging the towel tighter. It's not a fire. One of my glazes overheated, made some smoke. Then the sprinklers went crazy. He nods once, motioning to his colleagues. Check the back. Then his eyes lock on mine. Are you all right? Any burns? Breathing issues? I'm fine, I say, suddenly aware of how I must look, soaked to the skin, clay splattered everywhere, hair plastered to my face. Just wet. And embarrassed. The hint of tension in his shoulders eases, but he remains in professional mode, moving toward the kiln room as the alarm finally stops its shrieking. I follow, watching as he assesses the situation with practiced eyes. Chemical reaction in the glaze, he confirms after a brief inspection. The kiln itself is intact. Good thing you shut it down immediately. Not quickly enough to avoid this mess, I sigh, looking at the puddles forming on my concrete floor. At least the water didn't reach the drying shelves where clients' pieces sit. Caleb confers briefly with his colleagues, who begin packing up equipment. As the immediate urgency fades, I become intensely aware of how close he's standing, of the lingering scent of smoke and something distinctly masculine beneath it. You'll need to ventilate overnight, he says, removing his helmet. His dark hair is damp with sweat at the temples. And have an electrician check the kiln before you use it again. Right. Of course. I push wet hair behind my ears. I swear I didn't plan this as a way to see you again before tomorrow's class. The words slip out before I can stop them, and I immediately want to crawl into the kiln myself. But to my surprise, Caleb's mouth twitches. It's not quite a smile, but close. Terrible timing with men and machines, I add with a self-deprecating laugh. It's kind of my specialty. This time, the smile breaks through, brief, reluctant, but unmistakably there. It transforms his face, softening the hard lines and lighting his gray eyes. Something flutters in my chest at the sight. I've responded to worse first impressions, he says, and I'm startled by the hint of dry humor. The other firefighters head outside, but Caleb lingers, looking around my studio with new interest. His gaze falls on a half-finished sculpture near my wheel. It's a stylized mountain range I've been working on for weeks. You made all these? He asks, gesturing to the shelves of finished pieces. I nod, surprised by his interest. It's what I do. What I've always done. CJ hasn't stopped talking about your class, he says, the abrupt change of subject catching me off guard. He wants to come back tomorrow. Warmth spreads through me despite my damp clothes. I'd love to have him. Caleb nods, glancing toward the front where his colleagues wait. He should go, we both know it, but he shifts on his feet instead. You're new in town, he says finally. Not a question. 3 months, I confirm. I needed a change of scenery. Something in my tone must betray more than I intend because his eyes sharpen with interest. But all he says is, Juniper Falls is good for that. A call from outside finally pulls him away. At the door, he pauses, turning back to me with an intensity that makes my breath catch. Next time something smokes, he says, maybe open a window first. I laugh, the tension breaking. Next time, I promise. After the fire truck pulls away, I stand in my doorway, watching the red lights disappear around the corner. My studio is a mess, I'm soaked to the bone, and tomorrow I'll have to deal with finding an electrician and salvaging what I can of my test glazes. But all I can think about is the way Caleb Rivers smiled. Like he'd forgotten how but was willing to try again. And how much I want to see it happen again.
Chapter 2. Caleb. I'm 10 minutes early to pick up CJ from his second pottery class, but I can't bring myself to go inside just yet. Instead, I linger near the window of Mountain Clay Studio, watching through glass that reflects my own guarded expression back at me. Inside, CJ sits at one of the work tables, hands covered in gray clay, concentration etched on his small face as he shapes something between his palms. The woman, Sophie, moves around the room with easy grace, stopping to help different kids. Her honey blonde hair is pulled into a messy bun with what looks like a pencil stuck through it. Clay dust catches the afternoon light as it floats around her like she belongs in this element. My son is smiling. Not the careful, measured smile he gives teachers or my coworkers, but a real, unguarded grin that crinkles the corners of his eyes. I haven't seen that smile in a long time. Not since before the accident. Sophie approaches him, crouching beside his workstation. She says something I can't hear, and CJ actually laughs. It's a bright sound that travels through the glass and hits me squarely in the chest. They look at his creation together, and Sophie's face lights up with what seems like genuine enthusiasm. She places her hand near his on the table, not touching, but guiding somehow. Something shifts in my ribcage. A tightness I can't name. When I responded to her studio the other night, I'd told myself it was just the job. Another false alarm in a small town where the most excitement we usually get is a kitchen fire or a tourist with heat exhaustion. But standing here now, watching her with my son, I can't maintain that fiction. There's something about Sophie Bennett that unsettles me. Maybe it's the easy way she smiled through her embarrassment as water dripped from her hair. Or how she didn't flinch when the firefighters tramped through her precious studio. Or maybe it's just that CJ seems drawn to her like she's some kind of gravity well, pulling him out of the careful orbit we've maintained for years. An older woman with silver hair pauses beside me on the sidewalk. "They're quite something to watch, aren't they?" she says, following my gaze. I straighten, recognizing her immediately. "Ms. Elliot." "Hazel, please," she corrects with a warm smile. "I think we're well past the schoolroom formalities, Caleb. Though I must say, you haven't changed much since my third-grade class. Still watching over everyone, aren't you?" I shift uncomfortably under her knowing gaze. Hazel Elliott has been a fixture in Juniper Falls longer than I've been alive. She taught almost everyone in town at some point, knew all our parents, and somehow still remembers which kid put a frog in whose desk 30 years ago. "Just waiting for CJ," I say. Her charm bracelet jingles as she adjusts her scarf. "He's the spitting image of you at that age, serious, observant. Though he has Emma's gentleness about him." The mention of Emma's name is a sudden ache, familiar but no less sharp. Most people in town avoid mentioning her, as if her name might break me. Hazel has never been most people. "Sophie's been wonderful for that boy," she continues, nodding toward the window. "I knew she would be. That's why I helped her find this space." "You matchmaking again, Mrs. Elliot?" I ask dryly. Her eyes twinkle. "Not at all. Just putting the right people in the right places. Like chess pieces." She pauses, then adds more softly, "Emma would have liked her, you know." Before I can respond to that landmine of a statement, the door to the studio opens and the first of the children spill out, parents gathering them up. I step back, watching as CJ remains inside, still focused on his project while Sophie sits beside him, her hands moving in patient demonstration. Hazel pats my arm. "Don't be a stranger to new possibilities, Caleb. Our town is small enough as it is without people hiding from each other." With that cryptic comment, she continues down the sidewalk. I turn back to the window, unable to look away as Sophie laughs at something CJ says. My son looks relaxed, confident even. So different from his usual cautious self. It's like watching a version of CJ I haven't seen in years. And it rattles me more than I care to admit. The ease between them, the way she seems to understand his careful nature without trying to change it. It's both a relief and a reminder of what's missing in our life. What I've been unable to provide him since Emma died. I check my watch. It's time to go in. Time to pull CJ back into our routine, our safe, predictable world where I know how to protect him. But as I reach for the door handle, I hesitate, suddenly reluctant to break the spell I see through the glass. I push open the studio door after the last parent leaves with their child. CJ is still at his workstation, carefully cleaning his tools one by one. It's a habit I've tried to instill in him since he was old enough to hold a paintbrush. "Hey, bud," I call. "Ready to go?" CJ looks up, his face brightening. "Dad! Come see what I made." I approach his table, aware of Sophie watching from a few feet away, her arms crossed loosely over her clay-splattered apron. The studio smells of earth and something sweet, maybe the tea brewing in a pot near the register. "What do you got?" I ask, crouching beside CJ's chair. He proudly holds up what appears to be a small, slightly lopsided box with a lid. "It's a treasure box. For your desk at the station. For your keys and stuff." Something warm and unexpected expands in my chest. "That's really thoughtful, CJ." Sophie showed me how to make the lid fit just right, he explains, demonstrating how it sits on top. It has to dry for a week, then we glaze it, then it goes in the kiln. I glance at Sophie, who's giving CJ space to explain his creation. Her green eyes meet mine for a moment, and there's something in them, pride, maybe, or satisfaction, that makes me look away first. It's excellent craftsmanship, I tell CJ, using the same phrase that circulates around the firehouse whenever someone takes the time to do something right. Sophie steps forward, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. CJ has a natural feel for the clay. Some people force it into shape, but he listens to what it wants to be. She says this matter-of-factly, not with the fake enthusiasm some adults use with kids. When does he get to take it home? I ask. After next Thursday's class, assuming all goes well with the firing. She hesitates, then adds, actually, I'm hosting a special hand-building session this Saturday morning. Parents and kids working together. Her eyes flick to CJ, who's now carefully placing his treasure box on a drying shelf labeled with his name. Nothing fancy, just a chance to create together. Before I can formulate a response, she pulls a flyer from beneath the counter and hands it to me. Our fingers brush briefly, and I'm suddenly aware of the calluses on my hands compared to the clay-smooth softness of hers. The flyer is simple, printed on cream-colored paper, Family Hand-Building Workshop, Saturday 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. All ages welcome. There's a small illustration of hands shaping clay together. We'll be working with hand-building techniques, pinch pots, coil building, slab work, she continues. Parents and kids can create something meaningful together. It's a perfect way to capture memories. I'm on shift Saturday, I say automatically, even though I know I could easily swap with Rodriguez, who's been wanting extra weekend hours for his daughter's college fund. No pressure, Sophie says with a smile that reaches her eyes. I just thought I'd mention it. CJ returns to my side, wiping his hands carefully on a damp towel. What's that? He asks, eyeing the flyer. Ms. Bennett is having a special class on Saturday, I explain, already folding the flyer to tuck it away. Can we go? CJ asks, his voice careful, measured. It's how he asks for things now, without too much hope, ready for disappointment. I glance at Sophie, who maintains a neutral expression, not pushing either way. I appreciate that. I'm working, bud, I say, placing my hand on his shoulder. But maybe next time. CJ nods, used to my work schedule dictating our plans. Okay. Something in his easy acceptance twists in my gut. He's gotten too good at hiding disappointment. Thank you for the invitation, I tell Sophie as we head toward the door. And for the class. My pleasure, she replies, following us. CJ is a joy to teach. At the doorway, she crouches to CJ's level. Don't forget to keep an eye out for interesting textures for next week, okay? Anything that might make a cool impression in clay. I will, CJ promises, a spark of enthusiasm returning to his eyes. Outside, the October evening has turned cool, the sky deepening towards sunset. CJ climbs into the truck while I circle to the driver's side, the folded flyer still in my hand. Seatbelt, I remind him, starting the engine. As we pull away from the curb, I glance in the rearview mirror. Sophie stands in the doorway of her studio, arms wrapped around herself against the chill, watching us leave. The golden light from inside catches her hair, making it glow like embers. I open the glove compartment and tuck the flyer inside before pulling into traffic. Dad? CJ asks as we stop at a red light. Yeah, bud? Do you think Mom would have liked making pottery? The question catches me off guard, a sucker punch I wasn't prepared for. CJ rarely talks about Emma anymore. Yes, I say after a moment, my voice rougher than I intended. She would have loved it. I clear my throat. She always liked making things with her hands. Remember the bird feeder she built for the backyard? CJ smiles faintly. The one the bear knocked down. That's the one. We drive in silence for a while, the memory of Emma hovering between us like a ghost. Sophie said we could make presents, CJ says as we turn onto our street. Mugs and stuff, for people we care about. I nod, not trusting myself to speak. Later, after CJ is asleep and the house settles into nighttime creaks and sighs, I find myself back in the garage. I open the truck's glove compartment and pull out the flyer, smoothing the creases where I'd folded it. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., I read aloud to the empty garage. I could swap shifts with Rodriguez. He's been asking for weeks. I run my thumb over the simple drawing of hands shaping clay. My mind drifts to Sophie's studio, the warm light, the earthy scent, CJ's unguarded smile. To Sophie herself, with clay dust in her hair and that quiet confidence as she moved through her space. Family hand-building workshop, the flyer proclaims, as if it's the simplest thing in the world. As if family isn't a word that still cuts me open every time I hear it. I should throw it away. We have a routine, CJ and I. A carefully constructed life that works well enough. Safe enough. Instead, I fold the flyer again, this time more carefully, and place it back in the glove compartment. Just in case.
Chapter 3. Sophie. Saturday morning brings a nervous energy I haven't felt since my first gallery show. I've been at the studio since 7, arranging clay and tools at each station, telling myself it's just a casual workshop. Not that I'm hoping for one particular firefighter to show up. By 10:15, we have a full class. 8 families are working with clay. Laughter fills the space. And there isn't a sign of Caleb or CJ. I'm helping Mrs. Whitfield with a stubborn coil when the bell chimes. I look up, and my heart does a ridiculous little skip. Caleb stands in the doorway, CJ half hidden behind him. His shoulders are tense under his faded blue Henley, his expression caught between determined and uncomfortable. "Sorry we're late," he says when I approach. Shift change took longer than expected. "You came," I say, unable to hide my surprise. "CJ really wanted to," he says, then adds more quietly, "and I swapped shifts." I lead them to the only empty workstation, suggesting CJ show his dad what he's learned. As I walk away, I hear him explaining very seriously to Caleb about wedging clay to remove air bubbles. Over the next hour, I circle the room, but my attention keeps drifting back to the father and son in the corner. Caleb's large, capable hands that have probably saved countless lives, struggle with building a simple pinch pot. His brow furrows in concentration as clay squishes between his fingers, the walls collapsing for the 3rd time. When I finally make my way to their table, Caleb looks up with an expression of good-humored defeat. "I think I'll stick to putting out fires," he says dryly. "This is harder than it looks." "You're overthinking it," I tell him. "You're trying to control the clay instead of working with it." "Sounds familiar," he mutters, so quietly I almost miss it. I pull up a stool beside him, aware of the warmth radiating from his body. "May I show you something?" I ask, taking a fresh ball of clay and setting it between us. He nods, watching intently as my hands begin to work. "You know how water responds to pressure," I say, gently pressing into the clay. "Push too hard in one spot, and it rushes away. But guide it with the right touch." I demonstrate, my fingers creating a smooth depression, and it follows your lead. His eyes track my movements, professional interest sparking in his expression. "Clay isn't so different from the elements you work with," I continue. "It has its own nature. You can't force it to cooperate. You have to work with its properties." I offer him a fresh ball of clay. "Try thinking of it as containing energy that needs direction, not domination." Caleb's large hands hover over the clay for a moment before making contact. This time, his approach is different. More measured, less forceful. His fingers press and guide rather than push and demand. A small, even bowl begins to take shape beneath his touch. "Dad. You made something," CJ exclaims, leaning over to inspect his father's creation. The unguarded pride in Caleb's eyes nearly stops my breath. Not pride in his own mediocre pot, but in the joy of having impressed his son. "What should I make next?" he asks CJ. "A mug. Then we can have hot chocolate and matching mugs." Caleb laughs. It's a warm, rich sound I haven't heard before. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, bud. For the next half hour, they work side by side, CJ offering exaggerated encouragement. I circle the room, but my attention keeps drifting back to them and the way they lean toward each other, the matching concentration in their expressions. When Caleb catches me watching, I expect him to stiffen. Instead, he offers a genuine smile that sends a flutter through my chest. "You've created a monster," he says when I approach again. CJ's already planning an entire dinnerware set. As class winds down, CJ carefully carves his initials into his pieces. "Your turn, Dad," he says, handing Caleb the wooden tool. Caleb hesitates. "These might be better off unsigned," he jokes. "Every piece deserves a signature," I tell him. "It's part of its story." He considers this, then carefully adds CR to his bowl. I notice a small scar across his knuckles, evidence of a life spent rushing toward danger. "Time to clean up, everyone," I announce to the class. "Remember to place your pieces on the shelves with your name. They'll be ready for glazing next Saturday." As the other families begin gathering their things, CJ starts methodically cleaning his workspace, with Caleb following his lead. There's something beautiful about the way they move in sync, father and son, careful and thorough. "This was fun," CJ declares, wiping clay from the table. "I didn't know you could make so many things." I catch Caleb's eye over CJ's head, and something passes between us, a moment of shared joy in this boy's enthusiasm, a connection that feels both surprising and inevitable. The last family waves goodbye, leaving behind a studio filled with clay dust dancing in the afternoon sunlight. I've propped open both doors to let in the crisp October air, and the scent of fall, leaves and wood smoke, mingles with the earthy smell of clay. "Is there anything I can help with?" Caleb asks as CJ places their finished pieces on the drying shelf. "You've already done more than most. Usually I'm sweeping clay dust for an hour after these workshops." I gesture to the nearly spotless workstations. "I think we've earned a break." I grab a small wicker basket from behind the counter. I always bring snacks on workshop days. "There's a nice spot outside if you have a few minutes." Caleb hesitates, glancing at his watch. "We don't want to keep you." "Cookies!" CJ exclaims, peering into the basket. "Can we stay, Dad? Please?" Something in Caleb's expression softens at his son's excitement. 10 minutes, he concedes. We settle on the wooden bench outside my studio, beneath a maple tree already turning fiery red. CJ takes a cookie and asks if he can explore the small courtyard garden that separates my building from the neighboring store. "Stay where we can see you," Caleb calls as CJ races off to investigate a stone birdbath. With CJ occupied, silence settles between us. It's not exactly uncomfortable, but weighted with unspoken questions. Caleb accepts the thermos cup of cider I offer, his fingers brushing mine briefly. "So," I say, searching for neutral ground, "how long have you been with the fire department?" 15 years, he replies. "Started when I was 23. Always in Juniper Falls?" He nods, watching CJ, who's now carefully examining a monarch butterfly that's landed near the lavender bushes. "Born and raised. 4th generation, actually. My great-grandfather was one of the founding members of the volunteer brigade back when the town was mostly logging camps." "That's quite a legacy," I say, genuinely impressed. "What about you?" he asks, turning those gray eyes on me. "What brought you to our little corner of nowhere?" I laugh, surprised by his directness. "A series of questionable life choices?" I offer lightly, though the truth behind the joke stings more than I'd like to admit. His expression doesn't change, but something in his posture shifts, like he's truly listening rather than just being polite. It's disarming. I needed a fresh start, I admit, more honestly this time. I was part of a cooperative studio in Charlotte. 6 artists, big gallery space downtown, lots of promise. But it imploded. Spectacularly. "Imploded how?" he asks. I take a sip of cider, buying time. "I don't talk about this. Not to anyone." Yet something about Caleb's steady presence makes the words come easier. My partner, business and personal, decided I was more useful as inspiration than as an equal. He took credit for some of my designs, convinced the others I was difficult to work with, and then I shrug, aiming for nonchalance and missing by a mile. Then he kicked me out of both the studio and his life in the same conversation. Very efficient. I laugh, the sound brittle even to my own ears. Sorry. Too much information for a Saturday afternoon. No, Caleb says quietly. It's not. He's watching me with an intensity that should make me uncomfortable but somehow doesn't. His fingers tap once, twice against the thermos cup, like he's weighing his next words. How'd you find Juniper Falls? He asks instead. Would you believe a random pin on a map? I was looking for somewhere quiet, somewhere I could rebuild. Hazel Elliott found me crying over coffee at a gas station outside town. She convinced me to stay, helped me find the studio space. That sounds like Hazel, he says, a hint of fondness in his voice. She has a way of collecting strays. Is that what I am? A stray? The question comes out more vulnerable than I intended. The corner of his mouth lifts in what might almost be a smile. If you are, you're in good company. Half this town was lost before Hazel pointed them home. Something about the way he says it makes me wonder if he counts himself among that number. Anyway, I say, brushing crumbs from my jeans, that's how I ended up here, throwing pots in an old building and teaching kids to play with mud. Not exactly where I thought I'd be at 33, but you're rebuilding, he finishes for me. On your own terms. Trying to, I agree. Though sometimes I feel like I'm just running away. Caleb's gaze shifts to CJ, who's now carefully arranging pine cones in a spiral pattern on the ground. Don't run toward fire unless you know what you're walking away from, he says, so quietly I almost don't catch it. Another firefighter rule? I ask, trying to keep my tone light. His eyes meet mine, serious and searching. Life rule. Number 3. And what exactly does rule number 3 mean? I ask, genuinely curious. He considers this, fingers still tapping lightly against his cup. It means sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't what's in front of you, but what you leave behind. Unresolved. Unhealed. The words settle around us, more intimate than any touch. I realize he's not just talking about emergencies or evacuations. He's talking about life. About choices. Maybe about me. Is that what you think I'm doing? Running toward fire? I think, he says carefully, that you're braver than you give yourself credit for. Starting over isn't running away. It's running toward something better. A sudden lump forms in my throat. That's not what I expected you to say. The smile that breaks across his face then is different from any I've seen before, warm and genuine, reaching all the way to his eyes. It transforms him from handsome to breathtaking. I'm occasionally surprising, he says dryly. Before I can respond, CJ bounds back, pockets bulging with what I assume are more pine cones. Dad. I found like 20 different kinds. 20, huh? Caleb raises an eyebrow, but his smile remains. We'd better head home to catalog this collection, then. As they prepare to leave, CJ launches into an elaborate explanation of pine taxonomy that I suspect he learned in science class. Caleb listens with the focused attention he seems to give everything that matters, adding occasional questions that make CJ beam with importance. Thank you for the cider, Caleb says as they reach his truck. And the conversation. Thank you for coming today, I reply. Both of you. See you Thursday? CJ asks hopefully. Absolutely, I assure him. Your pieces should be ready for glazing by then. As they drive away, I remain on the bench, staring at the space where Caleb sat moments before. Something has shifted between us. Something I can't quite name but can definitely feel. A door opening, perhaps. A possibility taking shape. Don't run toward fire unless you know what you're walking away from. His words echo in my mind as I gather the empty cups and remaining cookies. I wonder what Caleb Rivers is walking away from, what ghosts he carries beneath that calm exterior. And I wonder, with a flutter of both hope and apprehension, if we might be running toward the same thing after all.
Chapter 4. Caleb. The brisk breeze sends blossoms and leaves skittering across the street as I make my way toward novel sips. Thursday mornings have become my routine on my days off. Coffee and breakfast pickup before heading to CJ's school for my volunteer hour. The familiar bell jingles as I push through the door, greeted by the scent of freshly ground beans and warm pastries. Morning, Caleb, Andrew calls from behind the counter. The usual? I nod, watching as he pulls a shot of espresso. In the corner, Hazel Elliott sits with a book, her silver hair caught in the morning light. She waves, and I give her a small nod in return. Beautiful day, Andrew comments, sliding my coffee across the counter. Hope the weather holds for the weekend. That's what the forecast says, I reply, adding the cream he's set out for me. I'm halfway to the door, brown bag of muffins in hand, when Andrew calls after me. Hey, tell that new Potter lady thanks for the mugs. We're selling them as fast as she can make them. Something warm uncurls in my chest at the mention of Sophie. It's been 4 days since the pottery class, 4 days of replaying the morning in my mind. The way she showed me how to mold the clay. How she laughed at CJ's ambitious plans for a complete dinnerware set. The quiet conversation we shared over cider while CJ explored the courtyard. I'll let her know, I say, more gruffly than intended, and push through the door before Andrew can notice anything in my expression. Outside, the morning is clear and bright, the mountains crisp against the sky. I'm about to cross toward my truck when movement across the street catches my eye. Sophie emerges from behind her car, struggling with a large cardboard box. Her hair is pulled back in its usual messy bun, clay dust already smudging her cheek though it can't be past 9. She maneuvers awkwardly up the 2 porch steps, the box clearly heavier than she anticipated. I see it before it happens. Her foot catches on the bottom step and her balance shifts, the box tipping. Without thinking, I'm moving, coffee and muffins forgotten on a nearby bench as I cross the street in long strides. The box hits the concrete just as she stumbles, clay bags splitting open, tools scattering. I reach her just as she rights herself, grabbing her elbow to steady her. Are you okay? I ask, scanning for injuries out of habit. Sophie looks up, surprise followed by recognition flickering across her face. Caleb! I'm fine. Just clumsy. She laughs, a slightly embarrassed sound. And now I've made a mess. I release her elbow, noticing how she flexes her wrist. Did you hurt yourself? No, it's just, she winces as she rotates her hand. Maybe a little twist. Nothing serious. I hold out my hand. May I? After a moment's hesitation, she places her wrist in my palm. Her skin is cool from the morning air, smooth except for the clay residue that seems permanently ground into her fingerprints. I gently check for swelling, pressing lightly along the bones. Any pain here? Or here? I ask, watching her face for signs of discomfort. No, it's really fine, she insists, but I feel the slight tension when I rotate her hand outward. Mild sprain, I diagnose. You should ice it and take it easy today. A smile quirks the corner of her mouth. Is that the professional paramedic opinion? It is, I confirm, suddenly aware that I'm still holding her hand, my thumb unconsciously tracing small circles on her inner wrist. I release her, clearing my throat. Let me help you with this. I crouch to gather the spilled clay, carefully repacking the torn bags into what remains of the box. Sophie kneels beside me, reaching for scattered tools. Thank you, she says softly. I wasn't looking forward to lugging that upstairs by myself anyway. You shouldn't be lifting anything with that wrist, I point out, gathering the last of the clay chunks. How heavy is this box? 50 pounds, maybe? Clay's not light. I raise an eyebrow. And you are going to carry this upstairs? Alone? A flash of stubborn independence crosses her face. I manage fine. Usually. Usually meaning when you don't fall up the steps? To my surprise, she laughs. It's a genuine sound that makes something inside me lighten. Fair point. Though in my defense, this is the first time I've actually fallen. Almost fallen. Whatever. I carefully lift the box, now considerably more precarious with its torn contents. Where am I taking this? You really don't have to, she begins. Sophie, I say, my tone making it clear I'm not budging on this. She sighs, but there's a small smile playing around her lips. Upstairs. I have a small apartment above the studio. The clay needs to be in a temperature-controlled space. I follow her inside and through the studio, noticing the changes since my last visit. New pieces line the shelves. Some I recognize as those made in the workshop, including CJ's careful creations. Others are clearly Sophie's work, elegant vases with fluid lines, mugs with perfectly balanced handles, a series of bowls glazed in blues and greens that remind me of mountain lakes. At the back of the studio, a narrow staircase leads to a simple wooden door. Sophie unlocks it, pushing it open to reveal a small but bright apartment. Large windows overlook the mountains, and the morning sun floods the open space. It's sparsely furnished but distinctly hers. There's pottery on every surface, books stacked beside a comfortable-looking armchair, a kitchen corner where herbs grow in hand-thrown planters. You can put it down by the pantry, she says, leading me to a corner where several other bags of clay are stacked. I set the box down carefully, making sure none of the torn bags spill further. When I straighten, I find Sophie watching me, something unreadable in her green eyes. Thank you, she says again. Would you like some tea? Or coffee? I should say no. I should get back to my truck, continue my routine, maintain the careful distance I've kept from everyone but CJ for 5 years. Instead, I hear myself say, tea would be nice. Sophie brightens, moving to fill a kettle. I notice she favors her left wrist, confirming my diagnosis. Before she can protest, I step forward. Let me, I say, taking the kettle from her hands. Ice first, then tea. Are all firefighters this bossy, or is it just you, she asks, but there's no heat in the question. Just following protocols, ma'am, I reply with mock seriousness as I fill the kettle and set it on her small stove. She laughs again, that bright sound that seems to fill the empty spaces in the room. And somewhere deeper inside me. Well, in that case, protocol man, there's an ice pack in the freezer, and mugs are in that cabinet. While Sophie settles at her small table with the ice pack, I find my way around her kitchen, surprised by how comfortable it feels to move in her space. The kettle whistles, and I prepare 2 mugs with the tea bags she indicates. When I set hers before her, our fingers brush. A momentary contact that shouldn't affect me as much as it does. So, she says as I take the seat across from her, do you often rescue damsels in distress, or am I special? There's a lightness to her tone, but something in her eyes makes me think the question isn't entirely joking. I wrap my hands around the warm mug, gathering my thoughts. I wouldn't call it a rescue, I say finally. Just being neighborly. Very neighborly of you to perform a medical examination on my front sidewalk. I can feel heat creeping up my neck. Force of habit. Sorry. Don't be, she says quickly. It's nice being looked after. Something in her voice makes me look up sharply. There's a vulnerability there I haven't heard before, a crack in her usually sunny demeanor. You're not used to it, I observe. She shrugs, her gaze dropping to her mug. Not really, no. I've been pretty much on my own since college. Even when I wasn't, I was still. She trails off, searching for words. Self-sufficient, I supply. That's a polite way of putting it. She offers a small smile. My ex used to call it pathologically independent. I snort. Sounds like a real charmer. Oh, he was, she says with a bitter edge I haven't heard from her before. Right up until he wasn't. Silence settles between us, not uncomfortable but weighted with unspoken histories. Through the windows, I can see clouds gathering over the distant peaks, the promise of afternoon rain. Is CJ still looking forward to finishing the treasure box? She asks, clearly changing the subject. He was so excited about it last class. He keeps checking the calendar, counting days until firing. I reply, grateful for the shift to safer ground. I think he's planning to put my grandfather's old compass in it. He found it in the attic last week. That's perfect, Sophie says, her face softening. He's so thoughtful. He gets that from his mother, I say without thinking, then freeze, surprised at myself. I never talk about Emma. Not to anyone. Sophie's expression remains gentle, open. Not pushing, just listening. It's that quality that loosens something in my chest, makes the next words possible. Emma was the heart of our family, I continue quietly. She could talk to anyone, make friends in 5 minutes flat. People just loved her. Instantly. That sounds like CJ, Sophie observes. He has that same quality. I nod, unable to speak for a moment as memories surface. Emma's laugh, the way she danced CJ around the kitchen, how she'd leave notes in my lunch bag even after years of marriage. It's been hard, I admit, the words scraping my throat. Raising him alone. Trying to be enough. Sophie reaches across the table, her fingers lightly touching the back of my hand. From where I'm sitting, you're doing an amazing job. I'm terrified of messing up, I confess, the truth spilling out now that the dam has cracked. Of not being what he needs. Of him forgetting her. Is that why you keep everyone at arm's length? She asks softly. To protect him? I look up, meeting her gaze. To protect both of us. Loss is. I can't do that again. And I won't put CJ through it. So you've decided not to let anyone new in, she states, not judging, just understanding. Ever? It seems simpler that way, I say, suddenly aware of how lonely that sounds spoken aloud. How empty. Sophie is quiet for a moment, her thumb tracing small circles on the back of my hand, mirroring my earlier unconscious gesture. Can I tell you what I see? She asks finally. I nod, not trusting my voice. I see a father who loves his son more than anything. Who would do anything to protect him. But I also see a boy who's learning from watching you that it's safer to be alone than to risk connection. Her voice is gentle but firm. Is that really the lesson you want to teach him? The question hits me like a physical blow. I'd been so focused on protecting CJ from loss that I never considered what else I might be teaching him. The realization must show on my face because Sophie squeezes my hand. I'm sorry, she says. That was over the line. No, I reply, finding my voice. You're right. A loud crack from the studio below makes us both jump. Sophie winces, removing the ice pack from her wrist. That'll be the shelf I set up this morning, she sighs. Probably just settled. I should check it, I say, grateful for the interruption. This conversation has ventured into territory I'm not prepared to navigate. Make sure it's stable. She nods, leading the way back downstairs to the studio. The morning class must be starting soon. Materials are laid out on the tables, ready for small hands. In the corner, a wooden shelf has indeed shifted, one side lower than the other. A small ceramic piece, one of the children's, by the looks of it, has fallen and cracked cleanly in two. Sophie picks up the pieces with a sigh. Poor Lily's pinch pot. She worked so hard on this. Can it be fixed? I ask, examining the clean break. I could try to salvage it before firing, but... She shrugs. Sometimes it's better to just start over. I take the pieces from her hands, fitting them back together. Rule number 4, I say quietly. Sophie looks up at me questioningly. Another Caleb Rivers life rule? You don't fix things by pretending they're not broken, I tell her, turning the reassembled pot in my hands. CJ broke a mug last year. It was one of Emma's favorites. He was devastated, tried to hide the pieces from me. Sophie looks up at me questioningly. What did you do? We glued it back together, I say simply. It doesn't hold liquid anymore, but it sits on CJ's desk as a pencil holder. He decorated the crack with a blue marker. Said it looked like a river. Making the breaks part of the story, Sophie murmurs, watching my hands. I look up to find Sophie watching me with an expression that makes my heart stutter. There's something in her eyes. Something warm I can't name. We're standing close, the broken pot between us, her scent, clay and honey and something uniquely her, filling my senses. Caleb, she says softly, my name a question on her lips. I don't remember moving, but suddenly we're closer, the broken pottery set aside. My hand finds the curve of her jaw, thumb brushing the smudge of clay from her cheek. Her eyes widen slightly, but she doesn't pull away. Instead, she leans almost imperceptibly into my touch, her lips parting on an exhale. Everything in me wants to close the distance between us. To discover if she tastes as warm as she looks, to learn the softness of her mouth against mine. My head dips slightly, drawn by a gravity I can't resist. But then Emma's face flashes through my mind. My wife laughing, loving, gone forever in an instant. And behind it, CJ's trusting eyes, the careful way he's rebuilt his world around just the two of us. I pull back, my hand falling away from Sophie's face. I should go, I say, my voice rough. I promised to help with the woodworking class at CJ's school this morning. Confusion and something like hurt flicker across her face before she composes herself. Of course. Thanks for helping with the clay. And the... She gestures vaguely to her wrist. Keep icing it, I say, falling back on professional advice because it's safer than what I really want to say. 20 minutes on, 20 off. The studio door feels miles away, each step an effort. At the threshold, I pause, unable to leave things like this. Sophie, I say, not turning. I'm sorry. For what? She asks, and I can hear the forced lightness in her tone. Being a good neighbor? I do turn then, finding her standing where I left her, arms wrapped around herself like armor. For not being ready, I tell her honestly. Understanding dawns in her eyes, along with something that might be hope. Well, she says carefully, I'm not going anywhere. When you're ready, if you're ever ready. I'll be here. The wind picks up as I walk to my truck, leaves swirling around my feet. I can still feel the ghost of her skin beneath my fingertips, still see the way she looked at me in the moment before I pulled away. For the first time in 5 years, I let myself wonder if there might be room in our carefully constructed life for something, someone, new. If perhaps the greatest risk isn't letting someone in, but what we lose by keeping them out.
Chapter 5. Sophie. The smell hits me first. It's acrid, sharp, and unmistakable. I'm unloading the kiln when it seeps through the open studio windows, cutting through the usual scents of clay and glaze. My hands freeze mid-motion as I set down the small bowl and move quickly to the door. Outside, people gather on the sidewalk, faces turned toward the northern ridge where a thin gray plume rises against the blue sky. How far off is it? Someone asks. Started near Eagle Point, answers a man I recognize from the general store. Wind's pushing it south. The wail of sirens cuts through as 2 fire trucks speed past, followed by Caleb's department SUV. My heart constricts at the flash of his profile behind the wheel. Jaw set. Eyes focused straight ahead. Sophie. I turn to find Hazel hurrying toward me, her charm bracelet jingling with each step. They've called everyone in, she says breathlessly. Even the off-duty crews. How bad? Bad enough. The ridge is bone dry, and the wind's picking up. The community center's being set up as a command post and supply station. What can I do? I ask, surprised by the steadiness of my voice. We could use another pair of hands. They'll need cooling towels, supply kits. 20 minutes later, I push through the community center doors with bottled water and energy bars. The large space has transformed into organized chaos. I spot Tessa directing traffic with a clipboard. Sophie. Water over there, food sorting in the kitchen. Are you staying to help? Of course, I say, joining a group at a table assembling care packages. 1 electrolyte packet, 2 energy bars, cooling towel, wound wipes, instructs an older woman with practice deficiency. I focus on my hands, trying not to think specifically about where Caleb might be. When an image of CJ's serious face flashes through my mind, my heart clenches painfully. First time, asks a voice beside me. A woman about my age, dark hair and a ponytail, works steadily alongside me. That obvious? I ask wryly. I'm Rachel. My husband's out there too. Mark Winters, Station 2. You get used to it, sort of. The waiting. Sophie, I introduce myself. I'm not. I mean, I don't have anyone. I trail off, unsure how to explain. Understanding softens her features. But you know someone on the line. I nod. Caleb Rivers. Caleb's a good man. One of our best. She doesn't elaborate, and somehow I know not to ask more. Outside, the light takes on a strange quality as the smoke plume grows darker against the sky. Ash drifts down like strange snow, settling on everything. Beautiful, in a terrible way, isn't it? Hazel says, joining me outside. I've never experienced anything like this, I admit. We get at least one big one every few years. Nature's way of cleaning house. I wrap my arms around myself. How much longer will they be out there? All night, likely. She glances at me. You're worried about him. Is that ridiculous? I barely know him. Hazel's smile is gentle. The heart doesn't always consult the calendar, dear. The community center doors open behind us as a familiar small figure emerges. Miss Sophie. CJ calls, hurrying over. His face is drawn with worry, but he manages a smile. Miss Hazel picked me up from school. Dad's fighting the fire. I crouch to his level. He is. He's very brave. He's the best firefighter, CJ says with such conviction that my heart squeezes. He always comes back. Of course he does, I affirm, though my own worry betrays me with a slight tremor in my voice. CJ studies my face with those serious eyes that mirror his father's. Are you helping too? I'm trying, I tell him. I made some care packages. Me too. He brightens slightly. I put extra energy bars in Dad's. He gets really hungry after fires. Suddenly, the community center doors burst open. Tessa rushes out, face flushed with excitement. They've got it. Containment at 60%. First crews coming in. CJ's entire body tenses, his eyes fixed on the road where vehicles will appear. His small hand finds mine, clinging tightly. Relief floods through me as the first trucks pull in. Exhausted firefighters disembark, blackened with soot but successful. Finally, a department SUV arrives. Caleb steps out, removing his helmet wearily. Soot darkens his face, and his uniform is torn near the shoulder, but he's whole. He's safe. Dad. CJ's shout cuts through the noise as he releases my hand and runs full speed across the parking lot. Caleb's exhausted face transforms at the sound of his son's voice. He drops to one knee just in time for CJ to launch himself into his father's arms. He catches him, holding him tight despite his obvious fatigue. You came back, CJ says, face buried in his father's shoulder. Caleb pulls back just enough to look at his son's face. You know the rule. CJ nods solemnly. Always come home. I hang back, not wanting to intrude on their reunion. But Caleb looks up, his eyes finding mine over CJ's shoulder. Something passes between us, acknowledgement, connection, and he nods slightly, a gesture that somehow feels like an invitation. As I approach, CJ untangles himself from his father's embrace but stays close to his side. Miss Sophie helped make care packages, he informs Caleb proudly. Did she? Caleb's voice is rough from smoke, his gaze never leaving mine. I brought you this, I say, offering the thermos. It's just water, but it's cold. He drinks deeply. Up close, I can see his exhaustion, the small cut above his eyebrow, the slight tremor in his hands. You scared me, I admit quietly. Caleb's eyes search mine while CJ watches us both curiously. Then his fingers brush against mine briefly as he returns the thermos. I'm okay, he says simply. Thank you for being here. CJ leans against his father's side, small face serious as he looks between us. There's a wisdom in his eyes beyond his years, an understanding of something that perhaps I'm only beginning to grasp myself. We should get you home, I tell Caleb. You both need rest. I'm not tired, CJ insists, though a yawn betrays him. I want to stay with Dad. Caleb ruffles his son's hair with a gentle hand. Always, he promises softly. Around us, firefighters reunite with loved ones, but we stand in our own small bubble, not 2, but 3. For now, it's enough that they're together, that they're safe. That when Caleb saw me waiting, something in his face lightened, even through the exhaustion. In the distance, smoke still rises against the darkening sky, but here, watching father and son, I hear their words echo in my mind. Always come home. A simple rule that carries the weight of their world. A rule I won't forget.
Chapter 6. Caleb. Please, Dad. It'll be awesome. CJ bounces on his toes, enthusiasm radiating from every inch of his 10-year-old frame. Sophie already said she'd do the clay part if you do the fire safety part. I look from my son's hopeful face to Sophie, who stands in her studio doorway with an expression that's both apologetic and amused. The morning sun catches in her honey blonde hair, and there's a smudge of clay on her cheek that my fingers itch to wipe away. You agreed to this? I ask her, trying to sound stern but failing. She shrugs, a small smile playing at her lips. He made a very compelling PowerPoint presentation. With transitions and everything. It was just 5 slides, CJ clarifies seriously. And Miss Hazel helped with the animations. Of course Hazel is involved. That woman has been orchestrating things since I was in elementary school. A fire and clay weekend, I repeat skeptically. For how many kids? Just 10, CJ says quickly. From my class. Miss Delaney already said we could use the community center since it has both the kitchen for demonstrations and the big tables for clay stuff. I run a hand through my hair, thinking of my precious weekend off. The first in 3 weeks since the Ridge fire. I'd plan to catch up on sleep, maybe take CJ fishing at the lake. The thing is, Bud. It would help them be safer, CJ interrupts, his expression suddenly solemn. After the big fire, Ethan and Maddie were really scared. They didn't know what to do if a fire came to their houses. I told them my dad could teach them, because you're the best at keeping people safe. And just like that, my resistance crumbles. When were you thinking? I ask, already knowing I've lost this battle. CJ's face lights up. This Saturday. From 10 to 2. Sophie said we could make clay candle plates with safety rims and fire-resistant trivets for hot pans, and you could show how to put out different kinds of fires, and maybe wear your gear. Slow down, I laugh, ruffling his hair. Let me and Miss Bennett figure out the details first. Sophie, she corrects gently. I think we're officially at Sophie now, don't you, Caleb? Something warm unfurls in my chest at the sound of my name on her lips, at the implied progression of whatever this is between us. Sophie, I agree, her name feeling right in my mouth. CJ looks between us, a satisfied smile spreading across his face that makes me wonder exactly how calculated this whole scheme was. At 10, he's already too perceptive for his own good. Or mine. I'll make flyers, he announces, already backing toward the studio door. I can use the computer inside, right, Sophie? Sure thing, she says. The password is Mountain Clay 22, I remember, he calls, disappearing inside and leaving us alone on the sidewalk. I shake my head, watching him go. I think we've been outmaneuvered. Thoroughly, Sophie agrees with a laugh. But it's actually not a bad idea. After the Ridge fire, a lot of parents have been asking about safety workshops. She hesitates, then adds more softly, and it was good to see him so excited about something. The observation catches me off guard. What do you mean? Sophie tilts her head, considering her words. CJ is usually so careful, so contained. Like he's trying to take up as little space as possible. Her eyes meet mine, gentle but direct. Today he was just a kid with a cool idea, bouncing with excitement. It was nice to see. Her insight into my son, so accurate it's almost painful, renders me momentarily speechless. I'd noticed the same thing, of course, but hearing it from someone else makes it more real, more urgent. CJ has been carrying too much, too carefully, for too long. He gets that from me, I admit quietly. The containing part. I've noticed, she says with a small smile that somehow isn't judgmental. You both hold yourselves so carefully. Except when you're making pottery, oddly enough. It's the clay, I joke weakly. Magical powers. Maybe it's the person teaching you, she counters, and there's a warmth in her eyes that makes me want to step closer, to close the careful distance we've maintained since that almost moment in her studio. Instead, I clear my throat. So, fire and clay. You really want to do this? I think it could be fun, she says. And useful. The kids would love it. It'll be chaos, I warn her. 10 kids, open flames, malleable clay. Sometimes chaos is good for the soul, she says lightly. Especially for people who like to keep everything contained. The gentle challenge in her voice makes something shift inside me, a door opening, just a crack. Saturday at 10, then, I agree. I'll bring the fire extinguishers if you bring the clay. Her smile is like sunrise. Deal. Saturday arrives with perfect weather. The skies are clear, the temperature is mild, and a gentle breeze carries the scent of pine through the open windows of the community center. I arrive early to set up the fire safety demonstrations, methodically arranging equipment on one side of the large room. Looking very official, Chief Rivers, Sophie calls as she pushes through the door, arms laden with plastic bins. Not Chief, I correct automatically, though I can't help smiling at her teasing tone. Just a grunt with a hose. Somehow I doubt that, she says, setting down her supplies. She's dressed in her usual clay-working clothes, worn jeans, a loose button-up shirt with rolled sleeves, and that purple apron with pockets full of tools. Her hair is pulled up in its usual messy bun, already sporting a smudge of clay though we haven't even started. Need help? I offer, moving toward her bins. I've got it. You focus on your flammable materials. She winks, and the casual gesture sends a ridiculous flutter through my chest. CJ is bringing the last box with Hazel. They're right behind me. Sure enough, the door swings open again to admit my son and Hazel Elliott, both carrying supplies. CJ's face is flushed with excitement as he carefully sets his box on Sophie's designated table. This is going to be awesome, he declares, surveying the room. Where should we put the snacks, Dad? Far away from anything that's going to be on fire, I deadpan. He rolls his eyes, a gesture that's becoming more frequent lately. Obviously. Kitchen counter, Sophie suggests, pointing toward the adjoining space. We can take breaks for refueling between activities. Hazel adjusts her ever-present charm bracelet, studying our setup with approval. I see you've brought the real equipment, Caleb. Planning to let them handle fire extinguishers? Training ones, I clarify. Water-filled, with the same mechanics but none of the chemicals. And yes, they'll each get a turn putting out a controlled fire in the parking lot. They'll love that, she says, then turns to Sophie. And you're doing fire-safe clay projects, Sophie explains. Match holders, candle plates with proper edges, some lessons on firing temperature and kiln safety. Well, the older woman says, it seems you two have things well in hand. I'll just help CJ with the snack table and be on my way. You're not staying? Sophie asks, sounding disappointed. Hazel waves a dismissive hand. Board meeting at the library. Besides, you don't need an old schoolteacher underfoot. This is your show. There's something knowing in her tone that makes me suspect, once again, that Hazel Elliott is arranging pieces on a board only she can see. But before I can question her, the first families begin to arrive, children's excited voices filling the space. Within minutes, the community center transforms from orderly preparation to controlled chaos. 10 kids, plus several hovering parents, create a noise level that would challenge a fire alarm. I catch Sophie's eye across the room and she grins, lifting her shoulders in a "what can you do" gesture that somehow calms the tension building in my chest. We gather everyone in a circle for introductions, and I find myself watching Sophie as she kneels to help a shy girl with her name tag. There's something so natural about the way she interacts with the children. There's no talking down, no false enthusiasm, just genuine interest and gentle encouragement. It reminds me of Emma, though the thought doesn't bring the usual sharp pain. Instead, there's a bittersweet recognition. These are qualities that matter, that CJ needs in his life. Dad's going to show us how to put out different kinds of fires, CJ announces proudly to the group. He's a real firefighter and he saved 14 people in one night during the Westridge apartment fire. I feel heat creep up my neck at the admiration in his voice, at the impressed looks from the children. That was a team effort, I clarify. And today we're going to learn how everyone can be part of that team by knowing basic fire safety. We divide the morning into stations. Sophie takes half the kids for clay work while I leave fire safety basics with the others, then switching midway. The parents help supervise, though most are as engaged as their children, asking questions and participating in the demonstrations. At the clay table, I glimpse Sophie guiding small hands to form simple, practical objects. She explains why a candle holder needs a lip to catch dripping wax. Her teaching style is patient but not coddling, expecting real effort while providing genuine encouragement. My own station involves more action. I'm demonstrating stop, drop, and roll. Show them how to check door temperatures before opening. And of course the proper use of fire extinguishers. The children are rapt, especially when I don my turnout gear to show how firefighters can enter smoke-filled buildings. Their questions are surprisingly thoughtful. What if you can't get downstairs? Are you scared when you go into fires? I find myself answering honestly, especially to that last question from a serious-eyed girl named Lily. Yes, I tell her. Being scared is normal. Courage isn't about not feeling fear. It's about knowing what's important enough to face that fear. Like saving people, she says solemnly. Like saving people, I agree. And sometimes like asking questions when you're not sure, or trying something new that feels scary. Her nod of understanding makes me wonder if I'm really talking to her or to myself. By lunchtime, the energy in the room is buzzing. Children proudly display their clay creations while demonstrating proper fire extinguisher stands to their parents. CJ moves between groups like a junior instructor, adding facts he's clearly memorized from my training manuals. Grilled cheese? Sophie appears at my elbow, offering a plate. Her cheeks are flushed, a strand of hair has escaped her bun, and there's clay up to her elbows, but her smile is radiant. Thanks, I say, suddenly realizing I'm starving. I take a bite and can't hold back an appreciative hum. This is good. Secret ingredient, she stage whispers. Actual butter, not that spray stuff. Decadent, I tease, and the easy banter between us feels new and wonderful. We eat side by side, watching the children compare clay creations and fire safety knowledge with equal enthusiasm. Several parents approach to thank us, their genuine appreciation for the workshop evident. This was a great idea, I tell her quietly. CJ was right. He usually is, she replies, bumping her shoulder lightly against mine. Smart kid you've got there. Yeah, I agree, watching my son demonstrate proper fire extinguisher technique to his friend Ethan. He is. After lunch, we move outside for the main event, letting each child use the training extinguishers on small, controlled fires in metal pans. I supervise carefully, but Sophie is right beside me, helping position the younger kids and offering encouragement. Pull, aim, squeeze, sweep, she recites, clearly having listened during my morning demonstration. You've got this, Maddie. The little girl successfully extinguishes her fire, beaming with pride as the other children cheer. One by one, they each take their turn, growing in confidence with each success. You next, I tell Sophie when the last child finishes. Her eyes widen. Me? I'm not part of the class. Everyone should know how to use an extinguisher, I insist, offering her the red canister. Consider it a trade. You taught me pottery, I'll teach you fire safety. A challenge sparks in her eyes. All right, Rivers. Show me what you've got. I position myself behind her, suddenly very aware of her proximity as I guide her hands to the proper position on the extinguisher. Wider stance, I murmur, my voice closer to her ear than strictly necessary. You need to be stable. She adjusts her footing, and I can feel her focusing, taking this as seriously as she does her craft. It's oddly endearing. Remember, I continue, stepping back slightly, pull the pin, aim at the base, squeeze the handle, sweep side to side. Sophie nods determinedly, her expression set in concentration. When I light the small fire in the pan, she moves with surprising confidence, pulling the pin, aiming low, squeezing the handle with steady pressure. The stream of water hits perfectly at the base of the flames, sweeping methodically until the fire is completely extinguished. The children erupt in cheers, and Sophie turns to me with a triumphant grin that does something complicated to my heartbeat. Natural, I tell her, impressed despite myself. I had a good teacher, she replies, and the look she gives me holds something warm and promising that makes me forget, momentarily, that we're surrounded by children and parents. The moment breaks when CJ appears at my side. Dad! Can we show them the fire truck next Saturday? Jake's dad said they could bring the pumper truck to the school parking lot. I laugh, ruffling his hair. One event at a time, bud. Let's get through today first. And that, I tell Sophie, hefting the last box of fire safety equipment, is why you never use water on a grease fire. I'll remember that, she laughs, unlocking the studio door as the afternoon sun casts long shadows across Main Street. Though I'm still impressed with how high those flames shot up during your demonstration. Controlled chaos, I remind her with a smile. Key word being controlled. The fire and clay workshop exceeded all expectations. Not only did the kids learn valuable safety skills, but watching Sophie work with them showed me yet another facet of this woman who keeps surprising me at every turn. We carry the last of the supplies into her studio, now quiet after the day's excitement. CJ stayed behind at the community center with Hazel, helping clean up the kitchen and, according to his conspiratorial whisper, giving you guys some grown-up time. Where do you want these? I ask, nodding to the bins of leftover clay. Back room, if you don't mind. Sophie leads the way, pushing through the swinging door into her workspace. The room is Sophie's sanctuary. I can feel it immediately. While the front studio is designed for teaching, this back space is purely hers. A professional potter's wheel sits in one corner, surrounded by tools organized with precise care. Shelves line the walls, filled with works in various stages of completion. The large kiln hums quietly, mid-firing cycle. Over there, she directs, pointing to a cleared space near her supply shelves. As I set down the bins, something on a back workbench catches my eye. Half hidden behind a drape of plastic, the unmistakable shape of a sculpture peeks out. It's different from Sophie's usual functional pottery. Curious, I move closer, drawn by a sense of familiarity I can't immediately place. Oh, Sophie says softly from behind me, a note of embarrassment in her voice. That's just something I've been working on. But I'm already close enough to see what it is, and the realization steals my breath. It's a sculpture of a man and a boy standing before a small cabin, mountains rising behind them. The man stands tall, one hand resting protectively on the boy's shoulder. It's a gesture I make with CJ a dozen times a day without thinking. The boy has his head tilted up, looking at the man with unmistakable trust. It's us. Unmistakably, undeniably us. The details are what undo me. The slight tilt of CJ's head, the set of my shoulders, the way my hand curves perfectly to fit his small frame. She's captured something essential about us, something I didn't even realize was visible from the outside. Sophie, I manage, my voice rougher than intended. It's not finished, she says quickly, stepping forward as if to cover it. I wasn't sure if. I should have asked before. It's beautiful, I interrupt, the words inadequate for the emotion welling in my chest. How did you? She stills, her nervousness shifting to something softer. I see you, she says simply. Both of you. The way you are together. I turn to look at her fully, finding her eyes wide with vulnerability and something else. Something that mirrors the tightness in my own chest. The cabin, I say, gesturing to the sculpture. It looks like mine. She nods. From CJ's description. He talks about it a lot. It's your grandfather's place, right? Her cheeks color slightly. If it's too much, or too personal. It's perfect, I tell her, meaning it more than I've meant anything in a long time. You've never even been there, but somehow. I'd like to, she says quietly. See it, someday. The invitation in her words, the cautious hope in her eyes, it breaks something loose inside me. This woman has seen me, really seen me, in a way no one has since Emma. She's seen CJ too, not as a shadow of his mother or an extension of me, but as his own person. And she's sculpted us both with such care, such attention to the details that make us who we are. I move toward her, closing the distance between us with deliberate steps. Her eyes widen slightly, but she doesn't back away. Sophie, I say again, her name suddenly the most important word I know. Yes, she whispers, so close now I can see the flecks of gold in her green eyes, can smell the clay and honey scent that's become synonymous with her in my mind. Before I can respond, before I can give in to the overwhelming urge to pull her closer, to discover if she fits against me as perfectly as I suspect she might, my phone buzzes insistently in my pocket. Reality crashes back. I step away, pulling out my phone to find a text from Hazel. CJ wondering when you'll pick him up. No rush, but thought you should know. Sophie reads the message upside down, a small smile touching her lips. You should go, she says, though there's reluctance in her voice. He's had a big day. We all have, I agree, equally reluctant to break this moment. At the door, I pause, turning back to her. Thank you, I say, knowing the words are insufficient. For today. For the sculpture. For everything, I want to say. For seeing us. It was a good day, she replies, understanding in her eyes. The first of many fire and clay weekends, maybe? The implied future in her words warms me. CJ would like that. Just CJ, she asks, a hint of challenge in her smile. I meet her gaze directly, finally allowing myself to acknowledge what I've been feeling for weeks. No, I admit. Not just CJ. Her smile broadens, lighting her entire face. Good, she says simply. Because I'd like that too.
Chapter 7. Sophie. The bell above my shop door chimes as I'm pulling a test glaze from the kiln. Setting down my tongs, I wipe my hands on my apron and head to the front, expecting one of my regular customers or perhaps CJ stopping by after school. Instead, a woman I don't recognize stands in my studio, examining one of my mountain range vessels with the careful scrutiny of someone who knows art. She's elegantly dressed in a way that immediately marks her as not from Juniper Falls, tailored blazer, artistic jewelry, and the kind of practical yet expensive shoes that speak of gallery openings and museum fundraisers. Hello, I greet her. Welcome to Mountain Clay Studio. She turns, her face lighting with recognition. You must be Sophie Bennett. I'm Eleanor Vega, director of the Asheville Arts Collective. My heart stutters. The Asheville Arts Collective is one of the most prestigious arts centers in Western North Carolina. A launching pad for artists looking to reach bigger markets. Nice to meet you, I manage, suddenly very aware of the clay under my fingernails and the smudges on my apron. I was in town visiting an old college friend, Eleanor explains, and she insisted I stop by. Said I wouldn't find work like yours anywhere else. She gestures to the mountain vessel. She was right. Your understanding of form is exceptional. Thank you, I say, warmth spreading through me at the validation. Eleanor moves through the studio with practiced ease, examining each piece carefully. She pauses before my newest collection. Vessels inspired by the local landscape, glazed in the blues and greens of mountain horizons. I'll be direct, Ms. Bennett, she says, turning to face me fully. We're in a difficult position. Our artist in residence has withdrawn unexpectedly. Family emergency. We need a replacement, and your work is exactly what we're looking for. Artist in residence? I repeat, certain I've misheard. A one-year position, fully funded. You'd have your own living space and studio at the collective, teach 3 workshops a week, give monthly demonstrations, and work toward a major exhibition next spring. She tucks a strand of hair behind her ear. It's quite prestigious. Most of our residents go on to significant national recognition. My mouth goes dry. That sounds like a remarkable opportunity. It is, Eleanor confirms. The stipend is generous, all materials provided, and you'd be working alongside some of the most respected artists in the Southeast. The implications hit me all at once. You're talking about relocation. To Asheville. She nods. The position begins June 1st. Just over 3 weeks from now. A flicker of apology crosses her face. I realize the timeline is tight, but as I said, this is an unusual situation. We normally conduct a 6-month search process. 3 weeks. Leave Juniper Falls in 3 weeks. What about my studio here? I ask, though I already know the answer. You'd need to close it, at least temporarily. The residency is full-time, with studio hours open to the public 4 days a week. She reaches into her bag, extracting a thick folder. All the details are here. Schedule, expectations, compensation package. We'd need your decision by Monday. If you accept, we'd announce it at our spring fundraiser next weekend. Monday. 4 days to decide whether to abandon the life I've just begun building here. This is unexpected, I say, mind racing. I understand it's sudden, Eleanor acknowledges. But opportunities like this don't come along often, Ms. Bennett. Your work deserves a wider audience, and the collective can provide that. I glance toward the back room where my sculpture of Caleb and CJ sits half-finished. The piece nearly led to something more between us just days ago. The fire and clay workshop. CJ's serious face lighting up when he masters a new technique. The quiet moments with Caleb that have begun to feel like home. I'll need to think about it, I hear myself say. If Eleanor is surprised by my hesitation, she doesn't show it. Of course. But we'll need your answer by Monday morning. The board meets at noon. Monday. A deadline that feels both too soon and too far away. Thank you for coming by, I tell her, walking her to the door. I'll review everything and be in touch. As the bell chimes her departure, I stand in the middle of my quiet studio, the folder heavy in my hands. Juniper Falls has become more than a temporary refuge. It's become home. And the timing couldn't be worse. Just when Caleb is finally opening up, finally letting me glimpse the possibility of something real, this opportunity demands I leave it all behind. I set the folder on my workbench, turning back to my interrupted work. The class will arrive soon, and I need to center myself before they do. But I can feel the weight of the decision pressing down, heavier than any clay I've ever shaped. Opportunity is knocking. The question is whether I should answer. And what I would have to sacrifice if I do. The sun slants through the studio windows, catching dust motes and clay particles that dance in the golden light. I'm alone with my thoughts, hands moving automatically as I wedge clay for tomorrow's class. Eleanor's thick folder sits untouched on my desk, its presence impossible to ignore despite my best efforts. The bell above the door chimes, pulling me from my reverie. Sophie? CJ's voice carries through the studio, followed by the soft thud of his backpack hitting the floor. "Are you here?" "Back room," I call, smiling despite my tumultuous thoughts. CJ's visits have become one of my favorite parts of living in Juniper Falls. I adore his serious questions, his careful observations, and the way he slowly let his guard down around me. He appears in the doorway, school clothes slightly rumpled, a paper clutched in his hand. "I got an A on my science project," he announces without preamble. "The one about clay minerals." "That's fantastic." I wipe my hands on my apron. "I knew you would. Your research was really thorough." CJ beams, the rare smile transforming his solemn face. "Dad helped with the graphs, but I did all the writing myself." "Speaking of your dad," I say casually, trying to ignore the flutter in my chest that accompanies any mention of Caleb, "is he picking you up?" "Nah, I'm walking to Hazel's after. Dad's on shift until tomorrow morning." CJ wanders over to my workbench, curious eyes scanning my projects. "What are you making?" "Just prepping for class." I hesitate, then add, "Actually, I had some interesting news today. The Asheville Arts Collective offered me a position as their artist in residence." CJ's hands freeze over a small clay bird I'd been working on. "What does that mean?" I take a deep breath. "It means I would move to Asheville. Live and work at their arts center, teach classes, give demonstrations. It's a full-time position for a year." His eyes widen. "You'd close the studio? You wouldn't be here anymore?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out," I tell him, watching his face carefully. "It's a very prestigious opportunity. Something artists work years to get." Something shifts in his expression, a shudder falling over the openness that had been there moments before. "Oh," he says, small shoulders tensing. "When would you go?" "If I accepted, I'd start June 1st. "So, in a few weeks." CJ's focus returns to the clay bird, turning it over in his hands with exaggerated care. "Dad says it makes sense you'd leave. People always do." The words hit me like a physical blow, stealing my breath. "Your dad said that? About me?" He nods, not meeting my eyes. "I heard him talking to Captain Mike. He said you'd probably go because it's a good opportunity, and that's what happens. People find better places to be." Each word lands like another stone on my chest. Caleb didn't even ask me. He assumed I'd leave, dismissed whatever has been growing between us as temporary, inevitable to end. The fact that he didn't say it to my face somehow makes it worse. "CJ," I say, my voice rougher than intended. "I haven't made any decisions yet." He shrugs with a forced casualness that breaks my heart. "It's okay. We're used to it. We're used to it." Two simple words that reveal so much about the fortress Caleb has built around them both since Emma died. A fortress designed to keep pain out, but really just keeping them in, isolated and protected and so alone. "Your dad's pottery project is almost finished firing," I say, desperate to change the subject before my emotions betray me. "The glaze turned out beautifully." CJ nods, some of the tension leaving his small frame. We talk about school and pottery for another 15 minutes before he checks his watch and announces he needs to head to Hazel's. "See you Thursday for class?" he asks at the door, and the hesitation in his voice tells me he's already preparing himself for disappointment. "I'll be here, I promise. At least for now, I think, but don't say." After he leaves, I stand motionless in the center of my studio, Eleanor's folder on one side and the half-finished sculpture of Caleb and CJ on the other. Perfect symbols of my dilemma. With sudden decision, I grab a ball of clay and throw it onto my wheel. The familiar motion of centering grounds me as my hands shape the spinning mass into a cylinder, then open it into what will become a mug. But as I pull the walls upward, I intentionally press too hard on one side, creating a flaw, a weakness. When the form is complete, I take a wooden tool and press it against the flaw until a clean crack forms. Not enough to destroy the piece, but enough to be unmistakable. I smooth the edges of the break, making it intentional rather than accidental. As the wheel slows, I think about Caleb's rules. The ones he's shared, the ones that govern his life with such rigid control. Rule number 1, always check your exits. It's his first defense. Always know how to escape, always be prepared for the worst. But when you're always looking for a way out, do you ever fully commit to staying? Rule number 2, keep your promises, or don't make them. His careful protection against disappointment. To never commit unless you're absolutely certain. But some promises are worth making even when you can't guarantee the outcome. Rule number 3, don't run toward fire unless you know what you're walking away from. His warning against impulsivity, against danger. And yet he rushes into burning buildings as his profession. Is he applying a different standard to his heart than to his duty? Rule number 4, you don't fix things by pretending they're not broken. The rule that showed me his capacity for acceptance, for growth. And for acknowledging damage as part of a story rather than something to hide. But he's not following his own wisdom when it comes to his heart. And finally, rule number 5, always come home. His promise to CJ, the foundation of their relationship. It's a vow never to leave, to always return. But what good is coming home if you never truly let yourself be present there? I lift the cracked mug from the wheel and place it carefully on the drying shelf. When it's leather hard, I'll carve designs into it. When it's bone dry, I'll fire it. And then, I'll glaze it with a special Japanese-inspired technique I've been researching. Kintsugi is the art of mending broken pottery with gold, of making the breaks part of the beauty rather than something to hide. Stronger for the break. More beautiful because of it, not despite it. Caleb lives by his rules to survive. To keep himself and CJ safe in a world that took so much from them. But survival isn't living. Protection isn't connection. And assuming I'll leave without even asking me isn't respect. It's fear masquerading as wisdom. I look at Eleanor's folder again, then at the sculpture of Caleb and CJ that captured so perfectly what I see in them both. Strength and vulnerability. Protection and need. I'm done running from hard things. I ran after Charlotte, after my ex betrayed me professionally and personally. I let fear and hurt drive me to Juniper Falls, seeking anonymity and safety. But what I found here was so much more. Community, purpose, and 2 people who matter to me more than I ever expected. I won't run from that just because it's complicated or because opportunity knocks elsewhere. But I also won't stay where I'm not trusted, where my leaving is assumed before I've even decided. If Caleb thinks I'll leave without a fight, without at least talking about what's growing between us, then he doesn't know me at all. I pick up my phone and stare at it, thinking. The artist in residence position would require me to completely uproot my life here, close my studio, and leave the community I've grown to love. But there might be other ways to grow my career without sacrificing everything else. I send a text to Eleanor. The opportunity is incredible, but I'm wondering if there are any options that wouldn't require full relocation. Perhaps a visiting artist role or exhibition partnership? Then I turn back to my wheel, grab another ball of clay, and begin again. This time, I create a perfect, flawless form. It's strong, balanced and true. A companion piece to the broken one, showing both possibilities side by side. When Caleb Rivers is ready to talk, really talk, I'll be here. And we'll see which mug better represents our future.
Chapter 8. Caleb. Another coffee? Sarah asks, already reaching for the pot behind the counter at the copper kettle. I nod, pushing my empty mug toward her. The diner is quiet this early. Just a few regulars scattered among the vinyl booths, the morning sun streaming through windows still beaded with dew. It's become my Thursday ritual to have breakfast here before heading to the station, especially when CJ spends the night at my parents' place in Elk Ridge. You're looking particularly broody today, Sarah observes, topping off my cup. Everything okay with the boy? CJ's fine, I say automatically. I didn't sleep well. The truth is more complicated. I haven't seen Sophie in 3 days, not since CJ mentioned the artist-in-residence offer from Asheville. 3 days of silence that feel heavier than they should for someone who's only been in our lives a few months. The bell above the door chimes, and Hazel Elliott walks in, spotting me immediately. Something in her determined stride tells me this isn't a coincidence. "Morning, Caleb," she says, sliding into the booth across from me without invitation. "Sarah, coffee please. And some blueberry pancakes." I eye her warily. "Bit early for a social call, isn't it?" says the man brooding into his coffee at 6:30. She adjusts her ever-present charm bracelet, the silver trinkets catching the morning light. "Besides, this isn't social. It's intervention." My stomach tightens. "Excuse me?" "I had a visitor yesterday," Hazel continues as Sarah delivers her coffee. "CJ. Very upset about Sophie moving to Asheville for a year." I focus on my coffee, avoiding her piercing gaze. "She got a good offer. It makes sense she'd take it." "Does it?" Hazel's voice sharpens. "And did you actually ask her about it, or just decide for her?" The question lands like a physical blow. I look up, finding Hazel's eyes fixed on me with the same no-nonsense expression she used when I was 10 and trying to get away with not turning in homework. "That's not." "It is," she interrupts. "You told CJ she was leaving before she even decided herself. Do you have any idea what that did to that boy? Or to her, when you repeated it?" Guilt and defensiveness war within me. "I was just preparing him for the inevitable," I say stiffly. "People leave. It's better to expect it than be blindsided." Hazel leans forward, her voice dropping to ensure only I can hear her. "You're not protecting CJ. You're teaching him to be afraid of love." The words hit with such force that I physically recoil. "That's not fair. Isn't it?" She holds my gaze, unwavering. "You've spent 5 years showing that boy that the only safe relationship is the one between the two of you. That connection means inevitable loss. That it's better to expect abandonment than risk attachment." I open my mouth to argue but find no words. Images flash through my mind: CJ's careful distance from new teachers, his hesitation to make close friends, the way he watches other families with a kind of wistful detachment. "Emma wouldn't have wanted this for him," Hazel says more gently. "Or for you." The mention of my late wife's name tightens my throat. "You don't know what she would have wanted." I knew her since she was 7 years old, sitting in my classroom with pigtails and mismatched socks. Hazel's eyes soften with memory. She lived fully, loved deeply, and took every chance at happiness that came her way. Including you, Caleb Rivers. I stare into my coffee, unable to meet her gaze as truth settles heavy in my chest. "Sophie hasn't accepted that position yet," Hazel continues. "She's trying to find alternatives that wouldn't require closing her studio and moving away. But she won't stay where she isn't wanted, where her leaving is assumed before she's even decided." The implications of what I've done wash over me in a wave of shame. The assumptions I've made without talking to Sophie, the way I've already pushed her away to avoid the pain of her leaving. "I was trying to protect him," I say quietly. "I know." Hazel reaches across the table, her weathered hand covering mine briefly. "But there comes a point when protection becomes a prison. For both of you." She stands, leaving her coffee mostly untouched. "You've spent 5 years teaching CJ how to survive loss. Maybe it's time to teach him how to embrace possibility instead." With that, she's gone, the bell chiming her departure. I sit motionless, her words echoing. "You're teaching him to be afraid of love." The truth in the accusation burns like fire in my chest. Because it's not just CJ I've been teaching, it's myself. Every rule I've lived by since Emma died has been about survival, about minimizing risk, about expecting the worst. But what kind of life is that? What kind of future am I creating for my son? For the first time in 5 years, I allow myself to truly imagine what Emma would think of the walls I've built around us. Walls meant to protect, but really just keeping us isolated. Keeping us from living fully, from loving completely. The way she always did. I pull out my phone, staring at Sophie's name in my contacts. 3 days of silence stretch between us, created entirely by my own assumptions and fears. It's time to tear down some walls. The mountain clay studio glows like a lantern against the darkening evening sky. Through the windows, I can see people milling about, wine glasses in hand, admiring Sophie's work displayed on pedestals and shelves. The Spring Gallery Night sign in the window is decorated with small ceramic flowers, each one uniquely crafted. I sit in my truck across the street, hard hammering against my ribs. After Hazel's wake-up call this morning, I spent the day thinking about what I want, what CJ needs, and what I've been too afraid to reach for. My phone buzzes with a text from Hazel. Stop overthinking and get in there. Of course she's watching. Probably from the bookstore window down the road. I take a deep breath and step out into the cool evening air. My reflection in the studio window shows a man I barely recognize. My hair is combed and I'm wearing the one decent button-down shirt I own instead of my usual flannel. The bell chimes as I enter, and several heads turn. Regular customers, a few firefighters from the station, Tessa and Hale from the general store, all raising eyebrows at my unexpected appearance. But I'm looking for only one person. Sophie stands near the back wall, speaking with a well-dressed woman I don't recognize. From their animated conversation and the folder in the woman's hand, I suspect she might be from the Asheville Arts Collective. Sophie looks beautiful in a simple blue dress, her hair loose around her shoulders instead of in its usual messy bun. Clay dust still clings to her hands, something I find oddly reassuring. She hasn't seen me yet, and I take a moment to study her as she explains something to her visitor, hands animated, face bright with passion. This is Sophie in her element, surrounded by her creations, sharing her vision with others. The thought of her leaving Juniper Falls creates a physical ache in my chest, but I push it aside. I'm not here to convince her to stay. I'm here to tell her the truth, whatever she decides. The visitor notices me first, nudging Sophie, whose sentence trails off midword as our eyes meet across the crowded room. Surprise flashes across her face. She excuses herself and makes her way toward me, navigating between guests with practiced grace. Caleb, she says when she reaches me, her voice carefully neutral. I didn't expect to see you tonight. I should have called first, I admit. But I was afraid I'd lose my nerve. Her expression softens slightly. Lose your nerve for what? To tell you I was wrong, I say simply. About a lot of things. She glances at the package in my hand, then back to my face. Maybe we should talk somewhere quieter? I nod, grateful for her understanding, and follow her through the studio to the small office in the back. It's cluttered with sketches, clay samples, and books on pottery techniques. The window overlooks the small garden behind the building, now silver in the twilight. As Sophie closes the door, muffling the voices from the gallery, something on her workbench catches my eye. A mug, unlike any of the polished pieces displayed in the gallery. This one has a visible crack running down its side, but the break has been filled with what looks like gold, making the flaw into a feature rather than a defect. That's beautiful, I say, nodding toward it. Why isn't it out there with the rest of your work? Sophie follows my gaze, a flicker of emotion crossing her face. It's not really part of the collection. It's personal. How so? I ask, drawn to the piece's imperfect beauty. She hesitates, then picks up the mug carefully. It's called kintsugi, a Japanese technique of mending broken pottery with gold. The idea is that something can be more beautiful for having been broken, that its history of damage and repair becomes part of its story rather than something to hide. When did you make it? Her eyes meet mine, direct and unflinching. After CJ told me what you said. About me leaving Juniper Falls. The words hit me like a physical blow. Sophie, I was hurt, she continues. That you'd made that assumption without talking to me. That you'd already decided I would leave, as if whatever was growing between us meant nothing. I was wrong, I say, taking a step toward her. I've spent so long expecting the worst that I couldn't see the possibility of anything better. Why are you here now? She asks, not unkindly. I take a breath, gathering courage. I heard about the artist-in-residence offer. Her expression clouds, and I hurry to continue. And I reacted badly. I assumed you'd take it, that you'd leave, without ever talking to you about it. You told CJ I was leaving before I'd even gotten the offer, she says quietly, a hint of hurt in her voice. I was wrong, I say again, the words coming easier now. I've spent so long expecting the worst that I couldn't see the possibility of anything better. She turns the mug in her hands, the gold seam catching the light. This mug represents how I felt that day. Broken, but refusing to be destroyed by it. Putting myself back together, maybe even stronger than before. It's beautiful, I say softly. Like the person who made it. Her eyes widen slightly at the compliment. It reminds me of something I need to learn, I continue. That broken doesn't mean ruined. That repair is possible. If you want it badly enough, she adds. I do, I say, meeting her gaze steadily. I've spent years hiding behind rules and walls, trying to protect CJ and myself from more pain. But I see now what I've really been doing is teaching him to expect disappointment. To fear connection. Sophie sets the mug back on the workbench, her eyes never leaving mine. And now? I've lived by a lot of rules to keep people safe, I tell her. But I forgot the most important one. Her expression softens, curiosity replacing caution. Rule number 6, protect what matters. I reach for her hand, relief flooding through me when she doesn't pull away. And that means fighting for it, even when it scares you. And what matters to you, Caleb? She asks, her voice barely above a whisper. CJ, I say without hesitation. And you. If you'll give me a chance to show you. Sophie looks down at our joined hands, then back to my face. The Asheville offer requires me to close the studio, move away for a year. They won't budge on that. I nod, steeling myself against the pain. I know. And if that's what you need, what's right for your career? I turned it down this afternoon, she interrupts. I blink, sure I've misheard. You what? I turned it down, she repeats, a small smile playing at her lips. I'm staying in Juniper Falls. I'm keeping my studio. But your career, the opportunity. There will be other opportunities, she says firmly. Ones that don't require me to leave behind everything I've built here. Everything that matters. The meaning behind her words hits me full force. You're staying. I'm staying, she confirms. If there's something worth staying for. My free hand moves to cup her cheek, thumb brushing lightly over her skin. There is, I promise. There's CJ, who lights up every time you teach him something new. There's the community that's already claimed you as their own. And there's me, if you want me, cracks and all. She leans into my touch, eyes bright with emotion. I want you, she says simply. Cracks and all. This time, when I lean toward her, I don't pull away. My lips find hers in a kiss that feels like coming home. It starts gentle at first, then deepens as her arms slide around my neck, the mug safely on the workbench behind us. When we finally part, she's smiling, a beautiful, radiant smile that reaches her eyes and warms places inside me I thought had gone cold forever. So, rule number 6, she says, a teasing note in her voice. Protect what matters. By fighting for it, I confirm, arms still around her waist, unwilling to let go. Not by hiding from it. I like that rule, Sophie says, reaching behind her to pick up the mug. She places it in my hands with a deliberate gesture. Maybe the best one yet. I look down at the mug, at the golden seam that makes its imperfection beautiful, and I understand the gift she's giving me. It's not just a beautiful mug, but her trust, her heart, her willingness to see my broken places and love me anyway. Outside, the gallery event continues without us, voices and laughter filtering through the closed door. But in this quiet space, Sophie and I have created something more precious than any artwork. This is a new beginning. Fragile, perhaps, with cracks and repairs visible like golden seams, but stronger for having been broken and mended with care. And this time, I'm not walking away.
Epilogue. Sophie. Juniper Falls, 1 year later. Sunlight pours through the windows of Mountain Clay Studio, painting everything in warm gold. The annual Fall Pottery and Cider Expo is in full swing. It's our second one, though the first is husband and wife. I pause in the doorway, taking in the scene that still feels like a dream sometimes. Children cluster around tables set up throughout the studio, small hands working clay with varying degrees of skill but equal enthusiasm. CJ stands at the front table, chest puffed out with importance as he demonstrates coil technique to a group of younger kids. At 10 almost 11, he takes his role as junior instructor very seriously. The patient way he guides a small girl's hands, his encouraging smile when she gets it right. He reminds me so much of his father that my heart swells. More cider? Hazel appears at my elbow, silver charm bracelet jingling as she holds out a steaming cup. Thanks. I accept it gratefully. How's the registration table? 23 families so far, and it's only noon. Her eyes twinkle. Quite the improvement from last year's 12. Well, last year we didn't have the fire department's official endorsement, I say with a smile, my gaze drifting to where Caleb stands near the kiln room, explaining firing temperatures to a cluster of fascinated parents. He looks up, catching my eye across the crowded space. Even after a year together, 8 months married, that small, private smile he reserves just for me still makes my stomach flutter. Go, Hazel says, nudging me. I'll watch the front for a bit. I weave through the activity, stopping briefly to admire a particularly creative bowl at the adult workspace. When I reach Caleb, he automatically shifts to make room for me at his side, his arm sliding around my waist with casual familiarity. How's it going? I ask. Just explaining why we don't put metal in the kiln, he replies, the corner of his mouth quirking up. Apparently Mr. Watson's son tried to improve his sculpture with his sister's bracelet. Crisis averted? For now. Though I hear there's a glitter situation at table 3. I groan. I'll deal with it in a minute. The parents disperse, drawn to their children's creations, leaving us a rare moment alone amid the chaos. Caleb turns to fully face me, his expression softening. Have I told you today how beautiful you look? Only twice, I tease, though the compliment still warms me. But feel free to continue. His hand finds mine, thumb brushing over the simple silver band on my finger. The studio looks amazing. You've doubled your student enrollment since last fall. We have, I correct him. This is as much your success as mine, Mr. Weekend Instructor. He shakes his head, but I can see the pleasure in his eyes. After that first fire and clay workshop, Caleb started helping more regularly with classes. What began as just assisting evolved into him teaching his own weekend safety workshops, integrating practical skills with creative expression. The blend of his methodical approach with my more intuitive one has created something special. A studio that's become a true community gathering place. My gaze drifts to the front window, where the finished version of my sculpture stands proudly displayed. The man and boy before their mountain cabin, now joined by a woman with clay-covered hands. It was Caleb's anniversary gift to me 3 months ago, the completed family. Coffee break? Caleb asks, nodding toward the back office. We slip away, leaving the controlled chaos in Hazel and CJ's capable hands for a few minutes. In the quiet of the office, Caleb reaches for the golden-veined mug that permanently lives on my desk now, filling it from the thermos we brought. 1 year, he says, passing me the mug. Since that gallery night. Best decision I ever made, I reply, taking a sip before handing it back. Turning down Asheville. I wouldn't have stood in your way, you know. His voice is soft, serious. If you'd wanted to go. I know. I meet his gaze, seeing the absolute truth there. That's part of why staying was so easy. You were finally ready to fight for us, but you would have let me go if that was what I needed. He takes a sip from the mug, from the exact spot where my lips had been moments before. It's a small intimacy we share, one of countless tiny threads that have woven our lives together over the past year. Rule number 6, he murmurs, setting down the mug and drawing me into his arms. Protect what matters. You do that by holding on, not letting go. My favorite rule, I say, rising on tiptoes to kiss him softly. His arms tighten around me, deepening the kiss until we're both a little breathless when we part. In the background, we can hear the happy chaos of the festival. CJ's voice rises above the others as he explains something with infectious enthusiasm, the laughter of children, the warm buzz of community. We should get back out there, I say reluctantly. Probably, he agrees, making no move to release me. In a minute. I rest my head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. When I came to Juniper Falls, I was running away, looking for somewhere to hide and heal. Instead, I found a place to stand and grow, a community to belong to, a family to love. We're not starting over anymore, are we? I ask, voicing the thought aloud. Caleb's hand comes up to cup my cheek, tilting my face to his. No, he says with quiet certainty. We're building something lasting. Through the office window, I can see CJ demonstrating to a younger child how to smooth the edges of a clay piece. Beyond him, the mountains rise against the autumn sky, solid and enduring. Like us. The gold-veined mud catches the sunlight, its imperfection its most beautiful feature. A reminder that broken doesn't mean ruined. That with care and patience, what's been damaged can be made stronger, more beautiful than before. Just like us. The end. This has been rule number 6, protect what matters. Written by Suzanne Ash. Copyright 2025 by Suzanne Ash. Production copyright 2025 by Suzanne Ash. Thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe if you want me to put more of my books on YouTube. Visit my website at www.suzanneash.com for more of my books or find me on Amazon.